Hey, my dear friends, welcome to another episode of this beautiful market. I'm Chris, ELLIOTT WAVE Cafe. Let's take a look at some things, take a look and see what this beautiful market is telling us. It is acting all over the place. It's staying in a very tight range now between 69.20 and 68.40. I want to take a look at a couple of things here to show you. I want to talk a little bit about CoreWeave. We'll take a second look at Bitcoin, although not much has happened there. But I'll do my best here to try to guide you a little bit in what's going on. The wave count that we've had, or that I've been presenting to you, it's still valid, although it's coming under quite a bit of pressure. In here, I was talking about the move, a possible move into the 61.8, and we would watch that to see if there's any opportunities there. Not really. It moved into the 78.6. This is a 2-hour chart and it's been holding those levels. Right there, we also have the 50 moving average. Either if you look at the cash market or even if you look at the futures, the prices are being held by the 50-day moving average. We have a convergence here with a little bit of a fib pullback. So we'll see what happens. If this move in here gets above this high, we're probably going to have to throw this count in the garbage, or we're going to become creative like sometimes ELLIOTT International does, right? They are very creative in some of their counts, from what I remember, where we're going to take this B wave and we're going to move it here, for example, and we're going to say that this was a B wave and the C wave is just happening now and we're still fine, and we're going to move lower. So we're basically going to delay the count, and we're going to, continue to kind of make it work. I'm not a big proponent of that, although, I don't have anything against it. You would look at this move, let's say, as being a flat. It's ugly. And then you'd have a C wave, and then you would sell off. This is going to get a bit extended compared with this decline, so I don't know if there's a lot there. But again, we haven't gone above this level yet, and once we do, then in my view, I would step aside and just kind of reassess the wave count, maybe zoom out, look a little bit at what's going on. Maybe it's that big triangle in that fourth wave, it's still forming. If I go to like a daily time frame, definitely this whole structure here, it's very ugly, and I gotta tell you, I'm looking at what's going on in the new highs versus new lows, and I continue to see a market that is pulled into two different directions. And this is one of the measures that basically the Hindenburg Omen is looking at as well, which is this indicator in here. And it's been acting, it's been hitting those high limits back in October, November, beginning of December. This is one of the clues that were telling us, hey, the market is weak. And look at the new highs versus new lows right there. And this is in the NYSE, if I remember correctly, but you can also see them back here, right? This is the NYSE, New York Stock Exchange. This is the S&P, and this is the Nasdaq. And look at the number of new highs. Look at the number of new lows. And when they cross a certain percentage, when you get above 2.5% in new highs and new lows, along with a couple of other things in here, it starts to hit those levels, and it tells you there is a market that is, is just pulling in different directions. And historically, from people that have studied this, is that it is, is an indication of upcoming sell-off in the market. Now, some other researchers say that it's not a very reliable indicator, that it fails more than it works. Again, it's just another tool that we're using, and it's something that I think merits to be paid attention to, because it basically shows you what happens to the price and how the market is kind of being pulled. And that's the reason why we're staying so much and so long up into these levels in here. So we'll see where we resolve from here. But the more we spend below this 50-day moving average, the weaker this market gets, I think. So we'll see where we go tomorrow, right? Where we could be pushing higher and making a break above this. And if we close above there, then the bulls start to have the upper hand. If we're coming back towards the lows, then, once again, I mean, look at the volume. It's not very convincing in either direction. The Nasdaq Composite, it's even weaker in here. I mean, look how tight this range is, and that's why it does feel like it's a corrective move against a downside move, right? When I look at it and I place, and I do something like that, and you have an initial sell-off, right? It does seem to me like that's what he wants to do, but I'm just trying to figure out as much as anybody else. And intraday, I do watch advanced declines. I want to see, who's strong. I watch the sectors. I watch the tick market and see kind of how it behaves throughout the day, how much buyers, how many sellers we're getting, how many stocks are ticking up versus ticking down. So I'm just watching the engine of the market. And today was not a day where you could sell. I've tried to sell a little bit into the 61.8, but it wasn't. He wasn't reacted. I mean, it was just a couple of points back down, or a point in the S&P, but it was no continuation. The market was acting. The breadth of the sectors were pretty good, and that was kind of holding the market up. So this is just on a kind of day by day basis, but there's really not much to do right now. Just continue to kind of watch it. Look like Dow is trying to kind of get back above that level. The Russell. It's just kind of hugging that 50-day. You see how important that is. So we'll just kind of grind at it day after day after day. But I do want to show you a couple of other things in here. So I wanted to show you CoreWeave in terms of the wave count, and this is an interesting stock. I personally own it, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. The other one that I own it is Kava, which it just had earnings. Apparently, the move is pretty good in the after hours. We'll see if they're gonna continue to act well in here. But CoreWeave, it's and maybe I've talked about it. Maybe I've done a video before in YouTube. I was too lazy to kind of go and check out if I did one or not. And so if you've seen this, I apologize. But it's clearly what we're seeing here. It's a nice overlapping structure against the initial impulse after the IPO, which is just a digestion of this entire move. It's getting a bit extended in here. I would like for it to kind of start moving. It's been acting pretty well when you look at the volume that's coming in. I'm going to put it in here just to kind of show you what's happening on the weekly charts. I like to look at the weeklies. So I would draw your attention to a couple of bars in here. If we look at this one of the lows, right, came on pretty decent volume. If you look at this guy in here, again, came on pretty good volume. The sell-off was on on big volume, but then we got rejected from lower levels. We're holding. We're trying to maybe break above this trend line. I know they have earnings coming up on Thursday, so in a couple of days, they're gonna report. I don't know, much about their fundamentals and how good this is. And I mean, it's a new IPO, but I know they have a lot of contract stuff like that. I don't want to get into all discussion like that, but it's definitely acting right at the channel line, and if we're looking at this as the key level for a breakout, I would definitely be let's say more encouraged to even add to the long positions the moment we break above this. One could start building a position the moment you get back above these lines in here and you start to close up higher on pretty good volume. It would be a kind of a small risk reward if you're going to stop below these levels. But it starts to look good above a 10-week moving average. I think we are still, yeah, we are still below something like a 200 day. I think this is now, yes, on the daily. So we got to get back above that level. We got to have a crossover. But if I go back to, so this is just, just on a kind of a technical analysis, look at the bar and the price section. But if I go and I look at the wave count, you do have what seems to be maybe, and I could label this as an ABC. I don't mind. Again, I don't care. You could do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want. 1, 2, let's say 3, 4, and 5, and then inside this we can go this to be a little bit larger. Let's just do it like an intermediate blue, and then we'll go in an ABC. So you have your A, B, and C, and this will be a minor, and then you can see in here, I mean, you're looking at the weekly time frame, but the 5-wave decline here is pretty nice. Even if I go to a daily, you can kind of see how nice this goes, right? You have your initial move 1, 2, you got your 3, you got your 4, and you got your 5. So just a beautiful 5-wave move in here for a wave C of 2, and then from here you're starting to kind of climb up, and again, this could be an ABC, and you could have an X wave right at the top of this channel, right? You could have, I'm going to show you this quickly before I would draw it, before I would put it up there. So you can have an A, B, and then let's say you do a C wave and you stop near this level, and then you come back down again. So this is what we would call an X wave, and you would fall. We'll see what happens when you get there. I'm expecting resistance, or it could start to build impulsive, where this basically would be the beginning of the wave 1, and you go in a 1, 2, and then you go 3, 4, and 5, and then this in here, it's another 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5, and obviously this would be lower degree, and then this in here, you would be a lower degree, where you would go from here in a wave 1 and wave 2, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's a 3, 4, and 5 for this wave blue 1. I don't like to do in motive wave, I mean in trading view. I know a lot of people that are watching these videos use trading view, and that's fine. In motive wave it's a bit quicker, but this works as well. So anyway, this would be the idea, that this was a wave 2, and you pull back into the 78.6 in here, between 61.8 and 78.6 for the deep wave 2. Now you're doing another one and another 2, and you would be looking for an explosion upwards, towards the top of this B wave. Now this could unfold as a 3rd wave, and then you would get resistance up there, maybe fall into a 4th wave, and then see if you can break. Again, the question would be, if we get all the way up there, what happens up into those levels, right? What's the price going to do once it reaches near 154 or 145? Again, between 145 and 150, how will it react? If it goes there, it doesn't have to. This could be an impulse, and this could be corrective. Okay, and look, just hear me out. What if, because you always have to look at the other side, right? What if this was an A, B, and then this is a C wave? Okay, this was a wave 1 or a wave A decline. Okay, and that's another wave 1 lower, or a wave A, and that's a B, and you're basically looking to do that. Okay, so let's not assume that we have all the answers. Let's not assume that our count is the correct one. I do have confidence in it. People ask me, well, how confident are you into something like this? I'm confident. I'm 50-50 confident. What do you want me to say? This could work out or it couldn't. So if I'm going to say that I'm 70% confident, what's that going to mean to you or what's that going to mean to anybody? If I'm going to say I'm 90%, what's that going to mean? It's still 10% chance that I could be wrong. Could I say I'm 100% confident? I would have to be crazy and I would have to, sell everything I own and put everything into the stock and just, because that's what people with 100% confidence do. Otherwise, you don't have that confidence. So, we got to be realistic about risk in here and always assume that what we're looking at is totally wrong and this could turn and it could be a loss. So I want you to think about it that way because this way you manage and exactly how things can unfold and Elliott Wave can show you that some things can go the other way too. Now there are instances maybe when the count looks so great that it's like, I don't think it can go the other way, but I don't know if I remember something like that in the past maybe, but again I've been through plenty of counts before and I know that they can turn around just when you think that you've got the secret. So this is what I wanted to show you, just a little bit of a thought process into a stock. They do have earnings, and we'll see what happens. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about Kava since I mentioned that stock and look at the wave count in that one and see kind of how it looks. But to conclude, and let's touch on Bitcoin too because I think it's I said I would talk about it. What really has changed since yesterday? If anything, we've gone lower, and like I said, we're still favoring that count where this moving here, it's a fifth wave, being a truncated fifth or moving lower, and then we have to watch that correction back to the upside. However, that far that's going to go. But first, what needs to happen is we need to stop going down, and so far those signs have not come in. So those are kind of my thoughts in Bitcoin. The other thing that I'm watching, I would love for Bitcoin to kind of get back above 40 RSI here on the daily before I would kind of start to increase my confidence. And if I look at the weekly, that's at 28. It's so sick. It's so sick and so hurt that when you have an RSI that's at 30, I'm not looking at it as oversold. When I was a young pup starting out and looking at learning the first indicators, I would be all over salivating about something that was oversold, and it would be oversold for a long time. And I was like, why is this not working? It's oversold. Why is it not bouncing? Well, that's why, because, the price is here. It's showing you that it's just not healthy, the ratio of prices against themselves and against the prior days is just not healthy. So until that improves, this there's nothing to do here. The RSI basically has to get back above 40 to kind of start to look like you might have a low in place. Now imagine how long that would take. That would take some time, and then if you really want to be, more of a give me something that's a bit more on the shorter side, then it really has to crack back above 60 and starts to be there into this green zone. So plenty of time until that happens. Anyhow, I will leave it at that, guys. And as always, thank you for watching and for your comments, suggestions. I see you on Twitter. I see you on Substack and on Discord. So I appreciate every single one of you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.